Welcome to Connected Payments with IXOPAY, where we talk to the payment providers powering global commerce. I'm Morgan Worrell, here with Thomas Beinhart. Join us as we explore the integrations, trends, and tech shaping the future of payments. Today, we're joined by Nicole Asling, Senior Vice President of Commercial Europe at PPRO. With 16 years in fintech and payments, Nicole's known for driving growth and reshaping partnership strategies across Europe. We're excited to have her on the show. Thanks for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for those who aren't deeply familiar, how would you explain the problem PPRO solves in the payment ecosystem and why that matters for merchants and partners globally?
Sure. So PPRO solves the fundamental challenge in global e-commerce, which is largely the complexity of local payments. When a merchant wants to sell to customers around the world, they quickly realize that credit cards alone won't cut it. And in many countries, people prefer and often only use the local payment methods that they know. For example, Pix in Brazil, Ideal in the Netherlands, lots of people have heard of that one, or for example, Bank Contact in Belgium. But integrating and managing these different systems is complex. If you think of some of the large global acquirers that exist and the size of the teams that are there to manage the global card schemes, and then multiply that by the different local payment methods that they may want to take on board, it definitely becomes time consuming and costly fairly quickly. And that really is where PPRO comes in. We simplify local and cross-border payments by providing a single platform that gives merchants and PSPs seamless access to local payment methods worldwide. One of the things I see a lot is, we have 300, 600, I think I've even seen 900 plus local payment methods. That definitely isn't kind of the PPRO approach. We're definitely looking at quality over quantity. There are so many different options available, but also, market penetration, etc., really is an integral part of our overall solution. So instead of building and maintaining individual integrations for each country, payment method, etc., businesses can plug into PPRO once and unlock that global reach. You ask, why does it matter? I think for merchants, it matters because they want to improve conversion rates. It enables faster market entry and ultimately having happy consumers and customers that can pay the way that they know and trust. And for partners like PSPs, platforms, banks, it can mean faster innovation, market entry as well as the ability to scale globally without those operational overheads and costs and risks that, we're all aware of. So I think in short, PPRO kind of takes the pain out of getting access to those global payments so businesses can grow faster and smarter, but remain relevant. So, yeah.
Yeah. Nicole, as you already explained, PPRO is known for enabling access to local payment methods around the world. Why are local payment methods so critical for merchants and PSP today? And how has that evolved over the past few years?
Yeah, I think local payment methods have become increasingly critical for merchants and PSPs, largely due to the evolving global e-commerce landscape, consumer preferences, and without a doubt, technology advancement. Tech has expedited its growth and diversification, to faster, safer, and more inclusive ways of paying. Look at things like mobile wallets, stablecoin, real-time payments, QR codes, NFC, the list can go on and on. Some stats that were shared with me, I'd love to know this off the top of my head, but it wasn't. But in 2025, digital wallets are really dominating the payment marketplace, and they will be accounting for just over 50% of global e-commerce transactions, with even higher adoption rates in regions like Asia Pacific, up to 75%. This trend reflects growing demand for convenient, fast, secure payment options. The importance of local payment methods is further highlighted by the in-country and regional variations of preferences. For example, I mentioned digital wallets being prevalent in Asia, but credit cards remain really popular in North America. I, for one, utilize Apple Pay extensively because it means I can use my phone and I'm lazy. Whereas if you look at like Latin America, installments are key. So it really does depend where you are, kind of what people are looking for. And I think that diversity really underpins the need for PSPs and merchants to be able to offer the appropriate range of payment methods to cater to their consumers, really to maximize their reach. I think, that is going to continue. I don't see that slowing down. We continue to see kind of evolving tech and different requirements. I don't think anyone, everyone used to talk about Boleto in Brazil, and suddenly Pix came in like a tidal wave and took over that market. And I think we're always kind of sitting here, especially in the industry we're in, sitting here waiting to see what that next thing is. So I definitely think consumer preference and technological advances are going to drive the utilization and need for local payment methods more and more.
Okay. I mean, I assume at PPRO you work with an impressive number of PSPs, acquirers, or platforms. What's your secret sauce for making those partnerships working so smoothly, especially when so many parts are involved?
I mean, that's a great question. I love partnerships. It's my previous role to this one. I think at PPRO, we really value ourselves as an integral part of that payment ecosystem. And if we had to talk about kind of the secret sauce, I truly believe it's that PPRO acts as a true enabler and not a competitor in that space. And that mindset really shapes everything that we do, from how we build our technology to how we structure our partnerships. There are probably three main areas that kind of comes into that. So as I mentioned, a partner first business model. And by this, I mean, we prioritize building strong, mutually beneficial relationships with our partners, whether that be platforms, distributors, system integrators, and definitely have steered away from kind of treating them as distribution channels and a mean to an end. We really want to power their growth, which creates trust and long-term alignment on both of our business goals. We have modular, scalable tech. So payments are messy. I think we all know that, right? We're all trying to work to simplify it, make it easier, etc. There are different methods, regulation, flows. I've been doing this forever, and I'm constantly learning new intricacies that I wasn't aware of previously. So what we really try and do is bring some structure to that chaos. The way that we've done that is with the launch of our single unified global API. And what that's designed to do is adapt to our partners' needs. It's flexible enough for platforms, robust enough for acquirers and PSPs at scale. And as a partner grows, we try and grow with them. And then the third one, which is a little bit of our USP, I guess, is around our deep local and regulatory experience and expertise. And our partners rely on us not just for our technical integration, but also for market intelligence. We understand the nuances, what's trending in Southeast Asia, or what the regulators expect in Brazil. How do we drive conversion in France? And we make that knowledge actionable. We do a lot of work with our local payment partnership scheme to really try and facilitate that connection, building up knowledge, because I think that's one of the areas that helps empower everybody in that eco chain and kind of adds value across the board. So they're the three key ways, I would say, that drives partnerships for us that aren't just functional, but are high impact and future ready, so we can kind of grow with our partners.
Great insights. I mean, speaking about, let's say, the daily business with merchants, from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges merchants face today when it comes to offering the right payment mix?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest challenge is knowing what the right payment mix is as a starting point. Consumers expect to pay their way, whether that's UPI in India or Swish in Sweden. But meeting the expectations isn't easy. And I think there are a number of ways that it adds complexity for merchants. Firstly, fragmented preferences across markets. There isn't a universal standard. It's not like taking a global car brand and saying, we want to sell in these next 4 European markets, so let's launch there. Of course, that's part of it. But to get that true market penetration, you need to understand how are local people paying for it. So not having that universal standard is one of them. Technical and operational complexity, so managing multiple integrations, contracts, updates, etc. Regulation changes, and that can vary by country. So that really can hinder the speed of expansion, is what I would say. So that's one of the challenges. And then I also think from a merchant perspective, balancing conversion with cost, the more complexity you add into the mix, more often the higher your costs are going to become. So how do you see that right balance? One of the things that I use quite frequently is unpicking great marketing from marketer penetration. Not easy, because there are some excellent marketeers in our industry, but absolutely, I think that is a fair one. And not just for merchants, for PSPs as well. I think when we look at PSPs, the volume of local payment methods, the upskilling teams to actually be able to sell and talk and provide, consultative advice to their merchants around local payment methods. They don't all work like cards, online versus in-store, single payment versus recurring. And all of those things make scaling globally and locally probably harder than it should be, which is why having the right partner to simplify, localize, and look at that kind of future proofing piece is critical for growth.
Okay. Let's quickly jump back to PPRO. You're operating in many different markets already. Where do you see the biggest growth potential for PPRO next? And are there any regions or verticals you are especially excited about?
Well, Thomas, it has to start with global domination. No, I'm kidding. That would be lovely, but that's definitely not it. Market penetration, I've mentioned it multiple times kind of in our chat. And by that, I don't necessarily mean net new markets, but looking at markets and really identifying in our product roadmap that we have today, where are the gaps? How do we get market coverage from mid 70s to high 80s? Are there additional local payment methods we could look to add? Let's take France. Will the adoption of Flower do? Is that something we want to try and talk to our customers about? I think then the other part of that for us is local payment methods and our merchant of record business in LATAM. So that is a region that continues to see exponential growth. So there will continue to be investment from us in those areas. New LPMs, there are definitely some that are on the cusp to kind of set and change the way that we work today. Wero is a prime example of that, leaning into that unification. There's this ongoing debate around that, but they've got Banconique, Rails, Ideal Rails, etc. Big, well-known brands, but seeing how does that develop? There's a big market opportunity in Germany with the payment changes that have happened over the last 12 months now. And I think, that's rife for some, Wero or others to kind of step into market need. In-house product functionality, we always talk about better than direct. And the concept of that really is around how can we improve functionality with our own tech stack to make local payment methods more accessible and usable for our merchants, PSPs, platforms, etc. And then obviously available to end consumers. Last week at Money 2020, we announced our subscription service, very much driven by consumer and merchant demand, and really looking at how can we bring some of those functions that exist today in subscription payments, nominal auths, different pieces that we can do there. How can we take some of that tech and build it in-house to then start creating a LPM solution that works for different types of merchant sales profiles, etc. And then verticals, of course. So I've mentioned subscription, streaming, but a lot of the work that we do also is around collaborating with local schemes, getting them comfortable with different MCCs that maybe they haven't worked with previously. So we can look to open up markets that hadn't existed before. We've seen some great success with this with crypto this year. So working with some of our local payment methods to really get them comfortable, with MiCA licensing and what's happening there and what's our approach on that, and sharing that, creating forums for open discussion so we can try and help our merchants grow, our PSPs grow, which helps their merchants grow, which obviously helps growth overall. We're all here to grow, apparently. So yeah, that's absolutely some of the areas that we are focused on. And, if I can just selfishly add one in, as I technically am the SVP for EMEA, I would love to see us do a little bit of work in the Middle East. It's not an area that we focused on previously, but I see huge growth there. A lot of trends happening in the payment space. A lot of the partners that we work with are investing there, as well as Africa, to be fair. So it's a market, or a region, should I say, that I'm very interested in understanding more and scoping out.
Yeah, I think diving a little bit deeper, if you had to name one big shift or trend that will shake up global payments in the next few years, what would it be, and how is PPRO getting ready for it?
Okay, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give you two One, because I probably don't know enough about it to give a succinct full answer, but agentic AI is something that I am so fascinated with. I think it's like the emerging frontier in payments at the moment, from my perspective. Largely, I'm talking about autonomous AI, so where they can actively manage, optimize, and execute a transaction for you. Trying not to use any specific brands, but I can go into an AI tool and ask for recommendations on something, a holiday, and then the concept that could go through and do all the booking and find the right hotels really catered to what I like it's so interesting to me. However, I think it's probably still in its infancy. So I don't think that's necessarily a trend we're going to see in the immediate front. Maybe for the early adopters, those who are really happy to jump into tech, understand it, etc. Probably is going to be slightly slower for some of us that are slightly more cautious. So I would say the second one, which is one that I think we're still experiencing at the moment, is the continued growth of real-time payments or instant payments. Definitely a trend for me that's been driven by consumers, increasing demand for speed, convenience, etc. I think all of us as consumers are getting used to instant gratification in every aspect of our lives and how we work, and payments is largely no different to that. We see more and more countries launching or expanding their real-time payment schemes. I've already mentioned Brazil Pix, but India UPI, going cross-border with that, trying to make that more adoptable for their consumers that aren't in country, and how do they utilize it? They aren't just faster transfers, they're fundamentally changing how money moves and enabling things like instant merchant settlements, new payment flows, etc., and fueling some of the rise that we're seeing in embedded finance. I think some of that dovetails quite nicely probably into stablecoin. Stablecoin was everywhere at the conference, so there was no avoiding it, even if you wanted to. Without a doubt, it was one of the buzzwords. People are talking about it. I see more traditional businesses looking to utilize and adopt it, so interested to see how that rolls out. I'm fairly sure I read an article last week from Uber, actually them saying that they were looking at it in terms of cross-border payments and just exploring if that's something for them to utilize. So I think these things kind of go hand in hand. The global digital payments industry is projected to reach over 20 trillion by the end of 2025. And I think for that to happen, faster access to funds, better cash flow, ability to offer new experiences, etc., is all going to be required. And ultimately for consumers, it's around speed, convenience, and trust. So how are we approaching that? It's central to PPRO strategy. Our core business is around providing access to local payment methods. And increasingly, those local payment methods are becoming more and more real time. To prepare for this, I think there's a number of ways. Enhancing our real-time payment capabilities is without a doubt one of them. Continually improving security measures is fundamental to that, and ensuring ease for customers who want to adopt that, I think. And for PPRO, it means continually being the bridge that really connects PSPs and merchants to those local payment preferences, which is a tongue twister if ever I tried one. Yeah, and we're really positioning ourselves to make sure our partners can not only participate in this, but continue to thrive and grow through it with us.
Yeah, that's great. I love what you said about the instant gratification and having that for me, that is spot on. I like to know that my payments are always going to go through, that I'm always going to get that transfer, hopefully within a day or two. I don't want to wait much longer than that. Yeah. So
I totally, and once I've made a purchase online, my notification in my bank account being like, this has been deducted, everything's just tallying up, you know where you stand. It provides that comfort and security, I think, in terms of being more comfortable to operate in that way more freely.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining us for this podcast. It was a wonderful conversation and so great to meet you. And I look forward to partnering further.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Take care.